Beginning with the end in mind, we're going to be making these cool burlap weavings. These are some finished examples that I created, my finished example, but I also wanted to show you some other student-made examples because it might give you some different ideas of techniques that you can try. I wanted to start off with a basic beginning. The vertical lines are called warp lines. The left to right lines are called weft lines. So your warp lines are your burlap. The weft lines are what we're going to be putting in with yarn. Starting out though, your burlap might look a little bit like mine. Some of it has fringes or pieces of the burlap that's coming apart or coming off. So I want you to take a minute, be careful or be gentle and patient with yourself and start at the very end. You know, like right here is where I'm taking my time and I'm making sure that when I pull my strings out of the project that I'm not taking too many out at once. I'm just trying to take one string out at a time. I like the way that fringe looks, so I'm going to take a few out of the top. And the bottom is where the end of the burlap was, so it's pretty thick. I'm going to leave that one alone. Great, now I've got a beginning part of my burlap. I'm going to pull some of the weft of the burlap out. I'm going to get real close so you can see what I'm doing. I take one of the strings and gently maneuver and tug so that some of those weft lines come out of the burlap. This is going to give me straight areas, open areas, that will allow me to take the yarn and go through. So I'm going to go ahead and take a minute and do that now. By the time that I'm done, I noticed I've got 1, 2, 3 at the top. I'm looking at the space on how much I have left. And my goal, I'm just going to go with 5 open areas that I'm just going to tug at so that I have some areas that I can begin my weaving. So you look at yours and decide, you know, like maybe 4 is enough for you. But I just really like the way that yarn looks, and so I'm just going to go ahead and give myself 5 open areas that I can start putting yarn in. Okay, on to the weaving. When I get started with my yarn, I am going to take one. I didn't have any needles for making my burlap at my school, and so I went ahead and I took some of those twist ties or pipe cleaners that I could put the yarn into. So you'll notice that that wire connected to the yarn, I'm going over about 4 or 5, under, over, under, over, under. So if you've ever done any weaving, you're always continuing that pattern, over, under, over, under. And I'm not too concerned about making sure each of those burlap lines are exactly the same. I am just eyeballing it. I'm just going to go ahead and say, well, just here's a few, there a few, and I just want to get an overall basic over-under pattern with my yarn going through. Now that I've finished going through, I'm just going to gently tug the yarn out of the hole and trim off any extra yarn that I have left over. Throw the extra scraps away. Some of those little pieces you don't need. Just make a little pile off to the side of your desk area, and then you might use them later, you might not. I'm going to go ahead and weave that through again, and now I'm starting with a different green color, dark green, light green. You can use as many different colors as you want to for this project. Again, if I started over on the dark green, then my light green I'm going to go under so that I create a pattern that has a different look to it. So dark green started over, light green starts under. And then I just go ahead and go do the opposite of what this first string did. Over, under, over, under. In this classroom, we're quite a team. So if you ever need any help and Mrs. Foxen might be helping someone else, you can phone a friend. Somebody that seems to understand over, under patterns might be able to teach you a different way or teach you what they're thinking about when they begin their over, under patterns. But I like making this video so you can see exactly what my string is doing, exactly what my yarn is doing, and what I'm doing with my hands. The other thing that I'm going to mention as I begin my over, under pattern with my yarn is that I'll stop somewhat and then I hold that down until the extra yarn is woven through. You'll notice that the orange pipe cleaner is not going all the way through at once. It does just about 3 or 4 over-under patterns and then pulls the extra yarn gently until the extra slack is pulled through. Once I've done that, I'll take the extra slack of the yarn that I don't need and set that aside. Now that I have a dark green, light green, dark green pattern done, I think I've got enough room that I can put one more light green strip going through my weaving pattern. I really love the way this is starting to look. Now throughout this project, I continued using a pattern of dark green, light green because I wanted some unity through my project. Please don't feel like yours has to use the same colors. You can use as many different colors that you want to in this project. When we took a look at some of the examples at the beginning, you might have noticed that there's a multitude, a variety of colors that students can use on this project. I just chose mine, again, for that sense of unity. You do what you want. Now here's a time-saving technique that you might want to try in this project too. Instead of putting one piece of yarn through my needle, now I'm putting 2. There are 2 dark green strips of yarn that is going through my weaving of the burlap right now. That's just a time-saving technique that you can use in this project if that works for you. If that seems too confusing or you start weaving and do not like the way this looks or do not think that this will work, you don't have to do it this way. This was just an idea that I got started thinking about doing on this project. Maybe you like the way thicker yarn looks. If you do, you might want to put 2 pieces of yarn through your needle as you begin this weaving project too. It's a little thicker. It might take a little bit longer to do your over-under pattern, but it might save you some time too. It's kind of up to you to decide how you want to do your weaving and what look you're looking for. In this technique, I'm going to be taking some of that leftover burlap that I pulled. I'm going to twist tie, or it's almost like tying my shoelace through some of those strips. And once I've tied it, I'll cut off the extra. Again, take some of the leftover, put it underneath, pull it through, and just like you tie your shoestrings, tie it together and cut off the extra. I'm going to continue doing this all the way across. I sped up the video because I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I just wanted to go ahead and show that to you really quickly so that you can try that technique if you like the way that looks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take my yarn and continue weaving the light green and dark green patterns throughout my project. Once I've finished weaving over and under throughout the rest of my weaving, I'm going to go ahead and start thinking about how to mat or frame the rest of my project. I grabbed some black construction paper and I noticed that some of my weaving is hanging off the black. You can leave it the way that looks if that's something that you like, or you can trim it with your scissors like I'm doing here. The choice is really up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Now that I've got my leftovers trimmed off and my burlap fits the black paper, I'm going to go ahead and staple that together. As I was looking at my weaving on the black piece of construction paper, I felt like I needed a little bit more green or a little more color in my weaving. I didn't like that open space that I left behind, so I'm taking some of my yarn scraps and putting that together. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and start taking some oil pastels and designing the frame of my border. I like using, again, some of that monochromatic light and dark colors of greens, as well as some brown that might remind you of some of the burlap that I used in my project. I hope you have fun watching the rest of this project and inventing and creating your own burlap images for this project. Have fun, everybody. Thanks for coming.